What's up guys, welcome to the Baja build part 6, and in this video we're going to be doing all the suspension for the Baja build. Now I know I normally don't ask you guys to like and subscribe and do all that, but for this video I really would appreciate it if you could, because we are in the hole deep for these parts and it's a lot more than I was planning on spending for this bike. Now, if you guys remember, I only bought this bike for $730. We are over $1,000 in just the suspension, which is way more than I was predicting on spending on this build. So unfortunately, the US is placing a lot of tariffs on products that are being made and shipped overseas. So I put this order in Scooter Attack, which they're based out of Germany. I order a bunch of stuff from them all the time. They have really great shipping costs for being overseas, and they have a bunch of stuff that you just can't find here in the US. So I normally, a few times a year, I'll make a list of stuff I need and I'll just do one big bulk order from there. This time there was only a few things I needed. My order only ended up being like around 600 bucks. But unfortunately, I forgot about the tariffs and I didn't realize it was going to be this much. I thought that the tariff percentage for Germany to the US was only 15%. It ended up being way more than that. To get these stage 6 forks here, and plus some other stuff that was in that order too, it cost me almost $1,000. So I've definitely spent more just on the front forks than I have on the whole entire rest of this bike. Which is kind of unfortunate, and that's not really how much I wanted to spend on this. I kind of wanted to keep this more of a budget scooter because I'm going to be using it off-road. And those forks were already super expensive to begin with. They're like $400, $500 forks. But I really could not find anything else that would be lifting the front end up and giving me the suspension travel that I wanted. So that was really the only option, and Scooter Attack was one of the only places that had them in stock. But we're going to dig into this package now, make sure everything's in there, and then we're going to go ahead and install these front forks and the rear shock on this thing. So I'm hoping nothing is damaged in here, because that's definitely going to be a pain if I have to return any of this, but normally they do pretty good with packaging. Like I said, I have ordered from Scooter Attack a bunch. They have basically anything you need, and their prices are pretty good. I normally go with Scooter Swap Shop in the US. They're definitely the go-to if you're in the States, and they have pretty good prices on stuff. They have super fast shipping, and Brandon, the owner, is super nice guy. You ask him a question, he'll hook you up with anything you need to know about pretty much any scooter. But they have a lot of good parts on there. The only problem is the stuff I was looking for was out of stock, so that's why I went to Scooter Attack. I also do order from Scooter Tuning CA quite a bit because I live pretty close to the border of Canada, so I normally get their stuff within like a day or two as long as their parts aren't back ordered. Alright, so other than the forks, I didn't really get a whole lot, nothing too crazy. I got an oil plug for this bike because I wanted to find one that was blue. I was hoping this was going to be a little darker blue. I feel like a lot of the anodized blue stuff is kind of like lighter, so this isn't going to totally match, but it'll still look nice on there. Then we have a red contra spring. I just kind of wanted that more for tuning and stuff. I don't think I really need it on anything. I think the yellow spring will be fine in my 89 build right now. I'm currently tuning that, so I just wanted to have it to play around with some stuff and see. Then we have some extra caps. These are for the forks. I just got these because they were like $1 or whatever. They're like aluminum anodized caps. Then here I have some spindles for paddock stand. I ordered a stage 6 paddock stand. That should be coming soon. So these were just extra ones, so if I have more bikes I can just throw these on. And then this is the last thing we have before the shocks. This is just a little blue bleeder cap. All right, and now this is the main attraction. Now I'm hoping these fit. I did have a bunch of people saying on Instagram that these would fit. I did put a post out a while ago asking what would be a good fork replacement for these, because the only ones I really knew of were the NCY ones, and I know those lower it like a tiny bit. So I wanted to find something that would raise it, and everybody said either bug eye forks aerox forks or the stage 6 aerox forks, which this is what I ended up going with because these had the most amount of travel out of all three and the most adjustability. So these are the forks. Like I said, these are meant for an aerox, so they have a little bit of a longer length on them opposed to the stock Zuma forks. I believe they are about 3 inches longer, but that'll be perfect for us because that gives us the length that we needed. Looks like this comes with a axle too in here. Yeah, so we'll have to get the front end apart here in a little bit and see how that is. I'm really hoping that everything just bolts up and I don't have to change a bunch, but we will see. Now, as you guys can see here, these are what those little caps were that I ordered. It's basically just like a valve stem cap. That's all there really was to it. These black ones, the only difference between these black and the orange ones is the black ones are just anodized black and they just say air on them. I might even find some cool blue ones to put on here. I think we are gonna take off the anodization on these. This I'm not really as concerned about because you're not gonna see it, but I'm very picky about the colors on my bike. And with the color scheme that we're going with, I'd like to have these either just raw steel or blue. So we will see if we can de-anodize those. A little trick you can do is soak your anodized parts in drain cleaner and that'll remove the anodization. Now this is the rear shock that we got for this. This is an MBM rear shock. This is kind of like a generic scooter shock, but it does have a reservoir on it, which I don't even know if this reservoir actually is hooked up to the rest of the shock or not. It might just be for show. This was kind of a cheap shock. I think I paid like 200 bucks or a little under 200 bucks for this, or like 150. I don't really remember. So it wasn't that much considering you can spend like $600 for a rear shock on one of these Zumas. A lot of the stage 6 and Malosi stuff is pretty expensive. So we're going to give this a try. And I do have another one of these too. So if I end up liking this, I will put it up on the site and you guys can go ahead and order this. I probably will do a little cheaper than 200 bucks for this. Now there is one more part that I forgot to mention that we are putting on this bike that kind of goes with the rest of the suspension, and that is a S23 side stand, because we are not going to be able to run the center stand anymore with the lift that we're getting on this bike. And I deleted the electric start on here too, so I'm only using the kickstart. And as you scooter guys know, most of the time the center stand interferes with the Kickstarter. I actually also just recently had my 89 center stand crack. I've never seen this before. It didn't even crack on any welds, it just literally cracked. So that's kind of another reason that I want to get rid of this on here, because we are going to be hitting some jumps and stuff and I don't want it flinging down and getting lodged in the dirt and cracked and all that stuff. I probably will save this one for my road build and I'll put it back on there at some point. Right now I'm just going to run no center stand on this, just the side stand. All right, so we're going to start off with the rear just because that's going to be the easier of the two out of the front and the back. I am putting on a Polini 30-degree air filter on here too, because the OEM one is just not going to fit with the new suspension on the back. Now, I wanted to run this with the reservoir facing the back this way just because I thought it would look the best, but it's definitely going to hit this plastic piece right here, and I think even if we cut this, there is potential for it hitting right here on the metal part of the frame where the coil mounts up. So for now, I'm just going to run it in this direction and we'll see how that looks. At some point, I might notch that out and we'll try to run it this way. All right, and there we go. There's the OEM shock off. And now we can see what type of lift we're gonna get with the new one. This shock also does come with an extra bushing that you can slide in here, and that will give us the right size for the prebug. So I just sat on it quick. It definitely feels way better. It has so much more travel in the back and there's just more height on it. It does feel a little soft though, so I'm gonna see if I can crank this down and get a little more stiffness out of it with the preload. Now, I think that looks pretty sick on there. Definitely a good amount of lift. It does look a little higher right now because there is no plastics on there, but it isn't a crazy lift. Definitely more than I have seen on most prebugs though. So I'm hoping there's no issues with the cables and everything back there because the engine is kind of cocked weird. We'll just have to see once we get into that. We might need to trim the shroud a little bit back there. And it is also, the whole bike itself is sitting weird because the front is kind of nosediving now. So now let's start getting into the front of the bike. I'm just gonna throw this on a milk crate right now because the center stand really is not doing much. And it's just gonna be a little easier to maneuver everything with it on some type of stand. So milk crates work great for pre-bugs. I think this milk crate actually might be a little too short for this one though because of the lift that we're gonna be doing. So we'll see how it looks on there. Now, as of right now, I am unsure if the brake line is gonna reach in the front because I think we are gonna get about 3 inches in terms of lift. So I'm not sure if it's gonna be enough on the brake line. Might pull or sit weird or something. So we'll just have to see how that looks once we get the forks on. I'm also hoping that this fender shroud right here doesn't hit the top of our forks, but I think we might have to cut that out because it looks like it probably will. I'm just gonna pull off the wheelie light too. I do have to replace this one because we did hit a log with it and I think it cracked because it got really loose. So I'm not even 100% sure this is gonna fit on these forks. I didn't think about that. Now I'm just pulling the caliper bolts off. Now, I don't have the right size Allen for the top of this shock, so I'm just using some channel locks to unthread that here. There we go. That's some movement out of it. So now I can get it to spin. And we can start unthreading this. This one's definitely unthreading a lot easier than the other one. There we go. Okay, that one wasn't too bad once I got it released from the triple tree. Man, I really do think one of the worst smells in the world is old fork oil or shock oil. That stuff always smells bad. Every time I've opened up a shock, it smells terrible. Now I'm gonna close these up all the way so they don't leak any oil while I have them in storage. And then I'm gonna just clean up the triple tree a little bit and we can start slapping our stage 6 forks in there. All right, so we have our forks here. These are 30 millimeter. I just wanted to make sure because there are 3 different types of forks, maybe 4, but I think there's 3 types of forks that came on the Zuma. So the first few years that had the drum brakes, those came with a triple tree and fork setup that was all one piece. It was welded on and they didn't have any fork oil in it. And then the first year that they did the disc brake, which I can't remember what year that was, but it came with a 3-bolt rotor and that had smaller fork tubes than this version, which is the 4-bolt version, which was the final version of the disc brake Zuma. And this has 30 millimeter forks, which is the more common one. I think the smaller one, they were 27 millimeter or something like that. So if you're running 27 or whatever, I don't know if it's 27 millimeter, but whatever the smaller fork size is, if you're running that in the 30 millimeter triple tree, then you have to use shims. So I just went and double checked that this is 30 millimeter and they will work in here. And then the other thing that I was looking at is there is a preload adjustment on the top here that is going to hit right here. Now, luckily they feel pretty good, screwed all the way in. I do want to go a few turns out. This is how they come. I'm not sure if they screw out any more than this, but you can see there's about a 1/2 inch difference right there. So what I'm gonna do, so I can still adjust these while they're in the bike, is line the forks up center and then drill a hole from up top so I can stick a socket in through this plastic part and adjust them. All right, so I have a 3/4 step bit that's just big enough for this. So I'm gonna hop under here, see if I can line this up and then drill both those out. I'm just gonna slide these in straight up till they... All right, I doubt that's tight enough, but we'll leave it there for now. I'm just gonna kind of get these tested and then I'll worry about torque specking everything after. Should be tight. Yeah, those look pretty sick, I will say. Those are gonna look sick as hell on there. Alright, let's see if we can get the wheel in there without scraping these up too bad. There is this little spacer on this side, which I'm not sure if we'll need to run or not. I want to try to be gentle with these because I don't want to scratch them up right away. I want to see if this axle is the same length and diameter too, because if it is, I think we'll just use this new one. It looks like the threads go in a little bit more. Basically looks the same, but the threads are a little bit of a different length, and the head's a different size too, and the toolkit I have is for this size bolt. So we'll reuse the OEM one. That looks pretty good to me. We might have to actually run the other. We might have to run the other nut and bolt because I don't think these threads are gonna reach in here. We're gonna have to stick the axle that this comes with. That's why the threads are longer. That makes more sense now, because these must be a little narrower. So the other thing I could do is get 2 washers and have this spaced out a little more, which might not be a bad idea in the future, just so there's not so much thread on the end of the bolt coming out on this side. Before I take this out, I'll get this one ready. So the difference between these 2 axles, what I was talking about, is these threads on the new one are longer than this one. The outside of this is narrower than the KYB forks. So the axle sticks out too much and there's not enough threads in there to tighten it all the way. So we are gonna have to run this one. And unfortunately, it looks like we're gonna have a lot of thread hanging out on this side. So I think probably what we'll do is cut that down at some point. Nah, that definitely doesn't seem right to me. It needs to be sitting over like a very, very small amount. So I wonder if we can shim. shim this piece out a little more. Like, it literally just needs like a millimeter. All right, so I cut 2 washers here. So the one will fit on the top and this one will fit on the bottom. They look like they will fit good. This, I think, is going to be like the perfect amount to shim it. So we're just going to slip them underneath this caliper mount right here and see if that gives us enough. The rotor is slightly warped. That seems pretty good to me. Works, works. Well, looks like I can't use a milk crate as a center stand anymore. It's taller than that. Well, this is super tall now. That feels crazy. It's like the perfect amount of lift. It matches it so good with the rear. I really like that. That's awesome. So for the dozen or so people that commented on my Instagram story about doing aerox forks or these stage 6 forks, thank you very much, because I'm very happy with how these look on here and I'm hoping they function even better. Now I just took the orange caps off. We're gonna put the black ones that we bought on there. These were replacement ones, but I just like the look of them over the orange for what we're going to be doing. And they do say air on them, so it's kind of cool that it lets you know what that is actually for. All right, guys, so I'm going to call it here for tonight. It is getting late, so I think this is a good stopping point. We do have to torque everything down still. I'm not going to ride it just yet, just because I want to make sure this is all set up properly and everything. Looks like we are going to be able to get our brake cable to work, or our brake line to work, so I'm probably just going to leave that. And then this wheel, I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's sitting a 1/4 inch too far this way. I'm not going to worry about it right now. If it feels fine, I might just even leave it. But that is what this spacer is for, because the stage 6 forks are not symmetrical. The inside of this side is cut in more. So the prebug wheel setup fits in there fine, stock, with the gearbox and the speedo gearbox thing and the spacer that's in there. And then I just had to shim the caliper a little bit, but the KYB ones are symmetrical. So the axle hole sits on there in the middle on both of these. On this one, it's cut into the one side. So that spacer makes it so they're both symmetrical. But with the gearbox on here, it's not going to fit like that. So I'm going to have to get a shim for this side, cut it down to the right length, and then add that spacer. And then we're going to have to mess with the caliper to push it in more. Back out here for day 2 of doing the suspension stuff and the side stand. I torqued everything down before I started recording, so that's all good. And then I went and took it on a quick test ride, and it feels amazing. It's still not like spectacular, like it's never gonna feel anything close to an actual like dirt bike suspension setup, but from what it was before, it is insanely different. So I'm gonna get this all set up for welding the side stand on. So just so you guys can see what I was talking about in here, the 89 has a plate right here and it has a nut in it, so you literally can just bolt it right up without having to weld the side stand on. This one does not, so we're gonna have to clean the paint off this, knock out this hole down there, and then we can kind of mess with this and see where we want that to sit. Here's that little window you cut out. They already have like perforations in it, so you might actually be able to break it out, but I'm just gonna hit it with a knife, see if I can score it. If not, we'll hit it with the Dremel. Yep, just popped out with a knife, so it was pretty easy. Now we can take our side stand, our S23 side stand from Scooter Swap Shop, see how this is going to fit up. It looks like they do give you a bolt in here too, so if you are bolting this on the 89, you just put it right through here and you can do it like that. But we're going to be welding ours. I'll clean this off, throw some tacks in it, and then we'll see kind of how it sits without the center stand on here, because I think that is still holding up a good amount of the weight. But that's about how it should sit. I don't think the angle of this foot on this side stand is going to be right for how we're going to angle it. But that's just because we raised it up so high, so I don't think there's really a whole lot that we can do about that. So I got this cleaned up where we're gonna be welding to, so that should be enough cleared out for the paint. I'm just gonna tack it up and then I'll kind of show you guys where it's sitting. All right, we got that tacked up, so I'm just gonna take it off the center stand and see kind of how this looks and feels. All right, so that actually feels pretty good. I did want it to make the bike stand up a little like straighter, because most places where I'm going to be riding this, it's going to be on soft ground or like muddy. So a lot of times the kickstand then sinks into the dirt a little bit. So this way, if I have it sitting a little more upright on flat ground, when it sinks into the dirt, my bike isn't going to fall way over or anything like that. So I think this is actually a pretty good spot. So I'm just gonna go ahead and weld up the rest of it. I might have to tip the bike over to get the bottom. I don't know if I'll be able to get it from the other side. Got a bead on that. For somebody that has no clue how to weld, I don't think that's too bad. Definitely doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. But I'll throw a bead on the back side, on the tube part of the frame, and then I'll probably shoot it with some paint and then shoot my little mark here for the ground with some paint too, just so none of it's rusting. And then we'll throw on the plastics, mock it up, and see how it fits. So that's how it's sitting now. And I think we matched the pitch up pretty good with the foot. I try to get it as close as possible. Here you can see my bad welds. But this thing feels pretty strong, so I don't think it's gonna go anywhere. So we'll let it cool down for a little bit. We got a good amount of clearance in between the CVT cover, so that's definitely not gonna hit. Well, it's a few days later now. We shot this with some paint a couple days ago. Now it's all dry. I think the black definitely looks a lot better on there than the finish that was on there, so that's all touched up. Now the only thing that we're going to do before we put the plastics back on the bottom here is pull out this bolt, because I'm eventually going to be doing some stuff in the CVT, and it's so much easier to just pull this out now while the bike's apart than have to literally take the rest of the bike apart just to get to this one bolt. In my opinion, this is like the worst design flaw on the whole Zuma, is that single bolt. Because whether you have the passenger pegs or not, it's just impossible to get this bolt. So we'll take that out, and then we won't need to disassemble the bike anymore to take the CVT cover off. So that'll be pretty easy in the future. All right, so those are all bolted up. We got the belly pan on. The only issue I had was right here. I had to bend some more stuff. If you guys watched the first video, you'll have seen me talking about how that was all bent and stuff. So the tab that holds that in was still a little bent. There wasn't a screw in there when I bought it. So we do have hardware in there now. We have the blue dress-up hardware in there. I think it looks pretty sick on the black. This is how the fitment for our kickstand is going, so it fit in there pretty nice. It does rub a little bit on this side, but that's just because I needed to roll it forward a lot more because our bike is lifted up so much. So you guys can see it still sits at a pretty good angle. So all things considered, I think we did a pretty good job lining this all up. It doesn't hit the CVT cover, doesn't hit the belly pan, and doesn't hit the passenger pegs. Next thing we have to do is pull the center stand off. There we go. All right, so that was definitely the most difficult thing that I've done on this so far. That was a massive pain in the ass. This is what the shaft looks like after trying to get it out. It was like rusted in there, and I had to take the exhaust off and try to punch it out from the other side. So this piece looks broken. There's a weld here and a weld here, and neither of them held. And you can see it's totally ovaled out the inside of that center stand now. So I'm gonna have to like fix this or weld it if I want to use it on this bike. You can see this is what the old style looked like. It was one solid through piece. Like in my opinion, this is a little bit better of a design. There's just more weld holding that in there. There's just like 2 tack welds on this one. We're gonna clean this shaft up. We're gonna clean our brake line retainer up because this thing's all sorts of bent now. That thing was pretty bent before, but so we'll get that stuff cleaned up, get a new cotter pin in there, and call it a day. So this is really how the bike's going to be sitting now. I think the ride height is about what it's going to stay at in the future. You can see how much higher there you go. You can kind of see how much higher the Baja build is sitting compared to the OEM Zuma suspension. Well, this is aftermarket suspension, but it's same ride height. And then the front forks are the same on this. But like with the fender on this thing, this one looks lower now. So I'll show that in a future video once I get the fenders back on. Right now, we're going to leave the fenders off because in the next video, we are going to be doing that low profile fuel gauge as well as the microcluster. But I'll get into that more in the next video. Like I said, I normally don't ask for you guys to subscribe or like or share or do any of that. You know, kind of do it as you want. But for this video, I really would appreciate it if you guys could at least share it around a little bit. Of course, I would love it if you guys could like and subscribe too. This video was a little more expensive than I was planning on. I was going to do the suspension on this bike regardless, but I kind of went in a little more to this bike than I was planning on just because of this video series. So if you guys are liking this, definitely let me know. I do want to keep doing these, not just on the Baja build, but any of the pre-bugs, and I'm planning on getting a few more. Always wanting more pre-bugs just for making products and doing videos and stuff like that. Next video will be the low profile fuel gauge. Like I said, we will go into tuning the suspension more for this too at some point. So stay tuned for that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.